Don't be a loser like me. Work on your skills, and the next thing you know, you'll be Jack Hughes signing for 8x8.
There you go. Welcome back to another episode of Tradin Jabs edition. Joining me is former NHLer, co-host of the Barstool Spit and Chiclet podcast, and Wayne Gretzky's left-hand man on TNT, Paul Bissonnette. Biz, how you doing?
What's shaking? I love coming on these podcasts because I always get intros and I get my tires pumped. Although Wayno's left-hand man, as much as it maybe in some cases doesn't sound like a tire pump, it is because he's the GOAT, and the fact that I get to work next to him is insane, and it's a dreamland at this point, man.
Well, let's dig into that one before we get into some Kings talk, man. What is it like, not only like learning, from Gretzky, maybe, in the games while you guys are watching it together before you're on the air. What has the experience been like with Wayne Gretzky, on the panel?
Well, that's why I said, if there's one guy I'll be a Robin to, the man, it's Wayno. And although he hasn't been here the last couple weeks because they're saving him for the games on the back half of the season when things ramp up and during playoff time, it's surreal because you never expect somebody who is that good at any sport and have like the aura about them to be as just normal and down to earth as he is. And he's exactly that. There's a reason why they call him the Great One. His storytelling ability, his memory is second to none. He can retell all these amazing stories from the past. So in the midst of watching games with him at TNT, he's telling stories from his, that he's experienced, and you're left kind of just jaw dropped all the time and every time. So as I said, man, it doesn't make any sense that I, with my career trajectory and meeting his on the media side of things, but I'm forever grateful. I will never take a day for granted, and he's the man.
Well, different game styles when you guys played in the NHL, much different, but yeah, congrats on working your way up to the same panel as him.
Thanks, pal.
Well, yeah, there you go. Well, you've obviously had a chance to cover the Kings. I believe they've been on TNT multiple times as you've been on the panel. With your expectations of the Kings going into the season and from what you've seen so far, what do you make of their first 25 games?
Okay, so I had them not making the playoffs in the Pacific. I know that there was big sorry, I misspoke there. There was a lot of, oh God, Jesus Christ, it's late here, pal. There was a lot of pressure coming into the season for them and expectations to make the playoffs. Doughty talked about it, and kind of the timeline for this core group running out, although they do have some nice young blood. Then Byfield goes down, and then the Doughty injury, and I wrote them off completely. I have been very impressed with the way that they handled themselves through these injuries, although given the strength of the Central, I would imagine that there's 5 teams coming out of there and only 3 in the Pacific. I still don't think they make the playoffs, but a lot better than I had originally anticipated.
Well, you mentioned Doughty, and he missed 16 games with tibial plateau contusion. Say that one back to me, Biz.
Don't even know what that is.
And he's back now. He's healthy. He joined the Kings against the Ducks this past week. There's been a lot of talk with him, not only to improve the Kings and to get those bodies in, which the Kings did over this last offseason, but he's also been very vocal about wanting to be on Team Canada and making that roster. Does a healthy Drew Doughty make Team Canada in Paul Bissonnette's mind?
I've talked to numerous people about this. I think that Armstrong has one of the toughest jobs in hockey, the easiest and toughest in the same breath, right? It's like you have all this pedigree of unbelievable talent, yet the expectation to win, and sometimes you can overthink it. I love Doughty because it seems like when the moment gets bigger, that's when he really comes out of his shell. And I just kind of respect his laid back attitude. And that if he enters that Team Canada locker room, everybody in that locker room is not only looking at him as a peer, if not this, a future Hall of Famer. This guy's won 2 Stanley Cups. He's played how many games? He still at his age is able to be a great two-way defenseman in the NHL. And I personally, I don't know what the list would be, but if it came down to him and a young guy where I thought they both brought the same amount on the ice, 100% I'm taking him. And even if you think that young guy might even be a little bit better, I still would take Drew Doughty just based on experience, because I feel like when you get to that moment, a moment that he's been not only in Stanley Cup finals, but at the Olympics as well, he fits right in, and he's not going to have those nerves, and there aren't going to be those questions of like, wow, you know, what am I going to do in this moment, because I don't know what to expect. So yes, I would put him on Team Canada. That's if in this short amount of time till they pick the roster, he's able to pick up right where he left off of this injury and get up to the caliber of play that we're used to seeing from Drew Doughty. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but it's also not the easiest answer when you have the type of talent pool that Team Canada had. And the same goes for, like, I don't think people had JT, Jonathan Tavares, on their roster.
Crazy.
And all of a sudden, because he's the type of guy that I would trust as a fourth line center, because I don't think he has a very flashy game. I think he's a great two-way center that adds intangibles, and if called upon, he can maybe bump a little bit up the roster. So I think that with your question about Doughty, I think that there's probably about 8 more questions like that for Armstrong to have to ask himself.
Yeah, like you said, easiest yet toughest. It's, you know, it is the Olympics, but again, like, as you know, it's so hard to fathom, you know, guys with that pedigree playing, you know, 8 to 12 minutes a game, no matter what position they're in.
Hey, Jack, so that's another thing too, is you don't know how these guys so I'm going to speak from experience. I went from a guy where I was, you know, a defenseman in the ECHL. Even when I was in the American League as a defenseman, I was playing like 15 minutes a game. Let's be generous and say 15. But all of a sudden you go to the NHL and I'm playing 5. It is so much different and harder to get into the rhythm of the game. And when you take these guys, let's use Drew Doughty as an example. Thomas Coberlin, he was playing in Toronto. He was playing between probably 25 and 30 minutes a night. Was unbelievable. All of a sudden, Boston trades for him, and then he went down from playing about 15 to 20 minutes, and he was invisible the year they won the Cup. And sometimes when you take these players who are used to playing 20, 22 minutes as a forward, and then all of a sudden you give them 10, they don't know what to do themselves. They don't get in the rhythm of the game. They're not getting their touches. They're not playing with other players of their caliber where they have to take an approach where they're being a lot more safe with the puck, and you know, and the risk to reward ratio changes. So it is a different beast, and I'm a guy who lived it, and I'll tell you right now, you go from all of a sudden being able to make plays to a guy who's hoping just not to make a mistake so he can get his next shift.
Fair. Well, you know, from Doughty to Kopitar, and a guy that isn't going to have his minutes slashed with the Kings and or Team Slovenia when they hit the Olympics.
Yeah.
You know, you spent 5 years with the Phoenix Coyotes, and you've spent your fair share seeing Kopitar do his thing, whether it mainly was from the bench, but also up from the ice level as well. You know, what makes Anze Kopitar so good right now?
I just think it's wild how you can rely on a guy for so long in so many aspects of the game, and just to play as strong defensively as he's able to and shut down other teams' top lines, but also produce points. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't understand the cardiovascular element. I don't understand the skill element. Just like I said, he can do it all, and really, like, there's only, I would probably say, about 10 guys in the league, maybe even 5 guys in the league that can play as well defensively but still maintain that integrity offensively as Anze Kopitar. And on top of that, best guy ever. Never heard one bad thing about him. He's loved by his teammates. He's a competitor and a proven winner. So I don't know what else you can ask for. And then and then the other thing is, well, you know, age. Well, look at him now. He's even last year, the year before that, I think it was he's three years removed from winning a Selke.
Yeah,
when he had close to 100 points, and it's just the fact that he's still doing it to the level he's doing at his age is banana lands. The league keeps getting younger, and he keeps getting older, and he keeps dominating. So I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It's like rocket Scientology, Jack.
Well, you talk about that old to young, and you know, you spent, I believe, 1.5 years playing with Brett Sutter in Ontario, and he's obviously a veteran, a savvy veteran, to say the least, in Ontario with with a lot of the Kings' young prospects. And, you know, it's no secret that we know that the Kings have a deep prospect pool that's extremely talented and has a bright future. What does a guy like Brett Sutter do for, you know, that group of people in Ontario as they're trying to not only develop their game and learn the professional life, but also gain that confidence from a guy that can show them the way?
Okay, so I mentioned the league keeps getting younger and younger, and it's like there's this pressure to you know, develop them and move forward. And all of a sudden, if they're 22 and they're not stars in the NHL, it's like, ship them off. I love the way that the Kings develop their prospects. I spent some time there, and he's a guy who's obviously had tons of experience, but he plays the game the right way. And sometimes the skill development of some of these prospects is so high, but yet their understanding for positioning and obviously the pro game is a lot different from junior or college, wherever they're coming from. And I just think having those types of savvy vets around just helps take the pressure off the coach to have to teach these guys accountability, positioning, so on and so forth. And when the coach doesn't have the eyes on him, a guy like Sutter can go up to him and say, hey, listen, here's what I'm thinking here and I'm seeing from you. And also the coach's voice might be wearing on you where you might be sick of even hearing them. So having these veterans around the locker room that I was able to have, you know, I mean, when I played in the American League, I think there was like 5 or 6 guys that could have over a certain amount of games. And I think over the course of the years, it's gone down. But going back to him, he's the type of guy that you need in your locker room. We had him there and he was awesome as a veteran. And he's just going to rub off on these young guys in order to add these little tools in order to get to that next level. They could be like tools that are this important, but as you add them up, like that little wall play, that, you know, that back check here, the, you know, late in the game and you're at the offensive blue line and you want to expose that defenseman who you think you got, but you know, you're just going to make that smart play and put it in, you know, in the corner below the goal line and go work for it there to eat clock. Like those are little things that he's going to kind of teach you along the way that can really be beneficial to winning at the National Hockey League level.
Well, in your experience with the Reign and obviously Manchester when you won the Calder Cup, I'll give you the chance to take a little bit of credit here. Was there anyone that, you know, you were able to kind of take under your wing and help, you know, prepare for the NHL as they were, you know, working their way up the ranks?
No, Jack, I was just there to protect them and make sure they put the puck in the back of the net, and they did it, buddy. It was unbelievable. I had such a great time there. So unfortunately, Sutter, we were just talking about, he wasn't there. He came on when we joined the Reign, but yeah, we had such a loaded squad, and you know, when Stutzy brought me in, it was more to just kind of keep the guys light in the locker room, make sure they were protected, and yeah, just kind of, you know, add a little bit of glue. You know, be a glue guy in there. So
for sure.
And also like the Sutter comparison, like he played, you know, 15, 20 minutes a game. I was still in some cases a healthy scratch, and in most nights playing, you know, maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes. So yeah. First of all, I wouldn't be taking any advice from me. And second of all, I don't think I gave 1 ounce of it when I was there.
You did so on 2 torn ACLs, did you not?
So when I was at the Reign, I retired on 2 torn ACLs. Jack, honest to God, this game has gotten so fast over the course, like even from when I started pro to when I finished it, it just became I can't keep up. I don't know what's in the water, but these kids are just skating at a different pace than when I broke in the league. And it's so good for the game. But that's kind of what did it. All the injuries started piling up, just trying to keep up at the pace of the game. So as much as it was good for people watching it in the entertainment aspect, it wasn't good for my knees.
Fair. Well, you know, you obviously were known for using your fists in the game, and that was a huge part of, you know, your, you know, accountability, but also just your worth on a team. You know, the game has changed in a lot of ways since you've hung it up. Do you like the direction that, you know, the NHL has gone with, you know, maybe getting, you know, rid of the fighting a little bit, but still keeping it in the game?
I think the game does lack a tiny bit of passion over the course maybe of the first half to 3/4 of the season. And I understand it. 82 game schedule. I think there's a happy median that we're around right now where obviously fighting's still legal. I never think they should get rid of it. And it's obviously backed up, although last year numbers were up, but that's because they were in the bubble and they were all playing each other like 20. The Battle of Alberta, I think they played each other 10 times, Jack. I mean, you might even have the wives lounges going at it at that point. But no, I think we're at a happy balance. And just going back to I just think that sometimes the regular season games have a little bit of lack of passion, just because maybe you got a little less meat on the bottom of it, right? Because sometimes those type of guys suck you into the fight. You might have a boring Monday nighter, but all of a sudden, one guy makes a move and there's, knuckles being thrown, and next thing you know, you got a barn burner on your hands. So I'm a little bit old school in the mentality that I like that aspect of the game. What I'm okay not seeing though, Jack, is the guys like off the draw. Like just scripted stuff where it's like, hey, this is we're the two meatheads in the lineup. We going out tonight? Okay, awesome. Let's put on a show for these guys, and then our night will be over. Yeah. No, I think that it's okay that stuff's done. I really enjoy the organic dislike for one another on the ice.
Let's go back to those, Manchester/Ontario days. What's maybe your best story from your time with the Reign or the Monarchs that we can talk about on
I would probably say, just in Manchester specifically, how we would play the 3-on-3s. We'd always have the day off. How sloshed some of these young guys would get on the days off in Manchester. But Stutzy would always have bag skates on after the day off. So guys knew that they were going to be able to sweat it out. You knew you'd have a hard practice. But I don't remember that many guys getting that sloshed on Sunday nights ever in my AHL career. You'd always have like maybe one or two or a few guys. It seemed like the whole team was running at that point. Even some of the leadership group was going out getting sloshed.
Well, hey, it brought you guys a championship, so whatever it takes,
yes,
right?
Yes, it did.
Here, we'll wrap it up here with a few, whether it may be trivia questions or quick hits here. Do you know how many penalty minutes you had in your career?
No, I wasn't a dumb player though, Jack. I wasn't a liability. I wasn't a liability. So the only PIMs that would rack up were the 5s. And are you saying throughout junior and everything, or just
no? That's too much math for you and I to add up. That we're sticking with the NHL here. Take a guess.
How much do I have to come within off the top of my head to be in the ballpark? 50?
I'll give you a plus take like 50.
I'll say 400 penalty minutes.
Oh, you're just on the outside. 340.
Ah! God, I couldn't even average just under 100 a season, for crying out loud. That's how soft I got. Hey, but that just shows the fighting. My first year, Jack, I think I fought 19 times, and then by my last year, I couldn't even find anyone to fight me. They were like, "No, we'd rather keep you on the ice." And I'd say, "Oh, okay."
Which is a dangerous thing to ask. Well, okay, we'll go back to that.
Damn it! Yeah, damn it! Here comes another minus.
Yeah, exactly. The last thing anyone needs. Again, back to the fighting topic. This, I think, is a ridiculous stat given the era that you were playing in. Do you know how many, or take a guess on how many preseason fights you got in?
In my 5 years, I'd probably say 12.
16.
Okay. Yeah.
Impressive, but
that's a guy who's coming in and trying to make a team every year.
Yeah, exactly.
And luckily I did.
Yeah, you made it long enough to get yourself.
So speaking of the Kings, Nolan in a preseason game ends up flooring Radoslav Klesla. Lays him out. Klesy had his head down, but I got to stick up for my teammate. I'm on the bench. I'm fuming. Nolan ends up getting 2 minutes. So whatever, we kill the penalty, and he's coming out of the penalty box, and Max Domi, who was in his first NHL training camp, was one of the killers. So he was on an extended shift. My leg's over the board because I'm my coach, we're up next. He's on, and he's coming out of the box. So as he comes out the box, I'm waiting for Domi to change, and I lock eyes with him, and I see him. He's skating to the bench, skating to the bench. I'm like, perfect. He's close enough. Now I can go. Well, as soon as Nolan got out of the box, one of the guys must have went over, and a scrum kind of ensues. So after I see that Domi's locked eyes and is facing and skating towards the bench, and he's close, I then jump off and go. I try to go after Nolan. I couldn't really get to him, but melee ensued. All of a sudden, the rest like, you're gone, leaving the bench to scrap. And I'm like, what the? And I'm looking around, and Domi was on the ice, and I'm like, what? So he must have seen it and turned around and line. But I got 10 game sussy, $71,000 fine.
Now that's big money for you too at that time.
So you think? I'm losing my mind. So I'm like, I want to appeal it. They go back, take a look at it after what we said. They end up changing it to 3 games. I could have appealed it, but if you appeal it and lose, it could go back the other way. I said, fine, I'll take the 3 games. So yeah. So I just figured I'd shout out that King story in the midst of all this fighting talk. It's still ended up costing me $11,000, Jack.
That's better than 71.
That's a kick, as they say. I don't know if you have to edit out the swear words in this, but that's a kick in the cojones.
All right, that's a little better, I think. All right, so we got 16 preseason fights, give or take 5 for the right answer. How many regular season / postseason fights did you get into?
Oh my goodness.
I know
I guess it's good that I'm not some dude hockey DB in my stats. I would say career fights, 40.
53.
Okay, all right.
So again, team player.
You mentioned playoff scraps. I'll give you another loser moment from Biz.
Yes.
I'm as nervous as anything. My first ever playoff game in Chicago, United Center, 21,000. I think we had home ice advantage because we finished ahead of them in the standings because we won our division, but they had that was a
hell of a playoff series too.
Ended up going to 6. That was when Smitty got hit by Shaw. That was the Rafi Torres hit Hossa, 15 game sussy. It was madness. So I'm in game 3 or 4. I think it's game 3. And my first shift, I go over the board, whistle, offside, real quick. So it's like, okay, whatever. I got, I was out there for 1 second. They throw Bolin out there. Keep in mind, I'm nervous as we get in the scrap. He pulls my jersey over my head. I forgot to do my tie down. I get chucked out of the game.
No.
My first playoff game that year, my second ever playoff game.
That's like your only job too.
1 second of ice time in that playoff game, right before they blew the whistle for the offside. So that was my one playoff scrap, and it was against Brandon Bolig.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So kids listening, don't be a loser like me. Work on your skills, and the next thing you know, you'll be Jack Hughes signing for 8x8.
There you go. Well, I mean, while we're on this, the heftier side of the game, who do you have as your maybe top 3 fighters or enforcers in the NHL right now?
I had a top 5 list pretty recently. I put Chara on it just because he's a mutant. Like he's like Goro from Mortal Kombat, where he's got him top 5. I would say Luch, Delorier from Anaheim. You guys know McDermott.
We're well aware of McDermott.
I got to see him. There were some guys in the minors that fought him. I honestly wanted to write them like Christmas cards. I felt so bad for him because he's an absolute killer. And I would probably, unless I'm forgetting some. Ryan Reeves.
There you go. I was waiting for that answer.
And then you could probably throw Wilson and Martin in all that mix there. Whoever wants to intertwine. So there's 7 guys I just mentioned, but other than that, there's definitely some young guys who are up and coming and willing.
First one that comes to my mind would be a guy who's been in the news recently would be Brendan Lemieux, who can throw him and has that power forward game.
He's he has to get under opponent's skin. I think he's most valuable when he's being that guy. We saw the incident. He just ended up getting he got 5 games. I don't think Brady's making it up. I think that sometimes when you're in the midst of a battle and you've been out there for a minute and you're winded, and all of a sudden, I didn't see the actual bite, but when somebody's hand covers your mouth and you're sucking air, sometimes your natural reaction is just to like bite down so you can get your wind, you can have the airways back. And I'll even speak to an incident that I talked about on the Spit and Chicklets podcast that just came out on Tuesday.
Yeah.
When I was in Tucson playing against the Roadrunners, I was with the Rain. I was at the bottom of a pile, and Eric Selleck somehow got his finger in my mouth. Now, I don't know what it was doing there, but I bit down, and all I heard was ah, and the next thing you know, my bridge broke, and I lost because I got a bridge on my fake teeth. So, I'm skating back to the penalty box and he's losing his mind, and I'm saying, yo, your finger's in my mouth, man. I don't know what your finger's doing there. And my natural reaction when my wires are crossed and I'm out of breath on the bottom of a pile is I don't want to get fish hooked. I know the best play here is to bite your finger so you get your finger out of my mouth. So I felt bad about it, but being in that situation, I kind of understand if that was the reason why he was doing it, because he needed the oxygen. Sure. If he was just being himself and being a rat, then there 5 games, keep the change, and a fine probably similar to the one I got for leaving the bench.
I'm sure it's just 11 grand. All right, and then we'll finish this off with
hey, and Jack, a human's mouth is dirtier than a dog's mouth too. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard, and I don't know what's going on inside the one's mouth during an NHL game, but you shouldn't have your fingers there. That's for sure.
Gatorade and water on the bench, and I'm sure some phlegm. I actually got in a fight, and I knocked the guy's front teeth out, and his teeth infected my knuckle to where I had to go to the hospital. And they cleaned it out. I ended up spending 7 days in the hospital, losing probably about 10 to 12 pounds.
It took me a minute there to comprehend what you were saying, but that sounds awful.
Yeah. So you got to be careful when you're getting bit by human beings about the infection status.
Yeah, touche, especially in this day and age with a pandemic going on.
Yep.
Hey, we'll finish it off here with I'll propose a bet to you, and I know you're hot on the Calgary Flames bandwagon, and your boy Witt's hot on the Edmonton bandwagon. I'm going to stick up for my Kings. I'll say that the Kings take the season series against the Calgary Flames, and in return, I get to join your podcast, and I'll let you take the other side of that bet. How's that sound?
Oh, and I'll take that. And you know why I like your chances? It's because I feel like every time they're playing against Sutter, they probably got about $100 grand on the board to win the game for the fine.
Hey, well,
I think he definitely pushes the guy's buttons. I heard towards the end of his tenure they were having like player only meetings and stuff like that. But hey, whatever it takes to win, and he's got 2 rings on it.
Exactly. So I'll leave that the open side of your bet to figure out what happens if the Flames win, but hopefully I'll be joining you guys.
We'll return the favor. We'll get you on the Chicklets podcast to tell your whole story, pal.
Perfect. Hey, love to do it, and if not, you're coming back here if you guys get the dub. Either way, hopefully we'll end up on Chicklets someday. But Biz, it's been a pleasure, and thanks for joining Tradin Jabs.
Buddy, keep kicking ass. We'll see you around, buddy.